There's a strange moment that happens when your investments start moving on their own. You check your account one morning and the balance is up more than your weekly paycheck. Not because you worked harder, not because you saved more, just because the market had a good day. At first, it feels unreal. Then it feels earned. That's when things quietly change. You're not struggling anymore. You're not guessing. You've built something real. And yet, this is the point where a lot of people stall, or worse, undo years of progress. Not because they stop trying, but because success starts whispering the wrong ideas. This milestone has a number. For many people, it's around $250,000 invested. Enough to feel powerful, not enough to be untouchable. It's where money starts behaving differently, and where your behavior starts to matter more than ever. If you don't understand what changes here, this moment can slow you down for years without you realizing why. Getting to your first serious milestone doesn't feel dramatic. There's no finish line tape, no announcement. One day, you just notice the numbers are bigger than they used to be, big enough to matter. Around this point, money stops feeling fragile. You're no longer worried about every market dip or every unexpected expense. Your investments can swing a few $1,000s in either direction, and life goes on. That's new. And it's dangerous in a very specific way. Before this stage, progress was slow and earned. Every dollar saved came from restraint. You knew exactly what it cost you. But now, gains show up without effort. A good week can add more than you used to save in months. That shift rewires how success feels. The problem is that your brain doesn't distinguish between effort-based progress and market-based progress. It just sees growth. And once growth feels steady, it starts to feel permanent. This is where people confuse movement with mastery. They start thinking they've figured it out, that their past discipline guarantees future outcomes. The caution that got them here begins to fade, not all at once, but subtly. They don't change their strategy overnight. They change their attitude. They become more relaxed, more willing, more open to just this once decisions. This is why the $250,000 range is deceptive. It looks like stability, but it's actually a transition point. You're no longer fighting to build momentum, but you're not protected from mistakes either. And what you do next matters more than everything you did to get here. Risk doesn't announce itself when you reach this stage. It changes quietly, almost politely. The same decisions you made before now carry heavier consequences, but they don't feel heavier at first. When your portfolio was smaller, a bad month hurt your pride more than your future. Losing a few $100s was annoying, but recoverable. You kept going. Nothing broke. At higher levels, the math looks similar on the surface, but the impact isn't. A 10% swing on a large balance isn't just a number. It's time, months of effort, sometimes years. And yet, because the balance is larger, your brain downplays the loss. It treats it as fluctuation instead of damage. This is the danger. The same tolerance that once helped you stay calm now encourages indifference. Losses feel survivable, even when they're setting you back in ways you won't fully feel until much later. At this level, people stop asking, "Can I afford to lose this?" and start asking, "Will this work?" That's a subtle shift, but it opens the door to decisions that were previously off limits. Bigger bets, faster moves, less patience. The irony is that the growth that brought you here also raises the cost of being wrong. One impulsive decision now carries more weight than dozens of careful ones did earlier. This isn't about fear. It's about scale. The rules didn't change, but the stakes did. And if you don't adjust your behavior to match that reality, the progress you worked so hard for can stall or reverse without a single dramatic mistake. This is the point where money starts lying to you, not out loud, quietly, through feelings. You open your account and see a strong month. The balance jumps by a number that once felt impossible, and without realizing it, your brain starts rewriting the story. You don't feel reckless, you feel successful. That's the illusion. Progress begins to feel like a rival. You stop thinking of your portfolio as something fragile that needs protection and start seeing it as proof that you've made it. That shift alone is enough to change how you behave. Suddenly, spending feels justified, not extravagant, reasonable, a better vacation, a nicer upgrade, a reward that doesn't feel like a threat because the balance still looks healthy afterward. The problem is that the gains you're reacting to aren't locked in. They exist on paper, not in your life. They can disappear as easily as they appeared, but the spending decisions they inspire are permanent. This is how people stall without realizing it. They don't blow everything up. They leak momentum. They turn growth into lifestyle instead of letting it compound. What makes this stage especially tricky is that nothing feels wrong. The account still looks strong. The future still looks fine. The danger isn't obvious until years later, when progress seems slower than it should be. The illusion isn't that you're rich, it's that you're safe to relax. And at this level, relaxing too early costs more than any market downturn ever could. After a while, the illusion deepens into something more dangerous: confidence without restraint. You've made good decisions for years. You've stayed consistent. You've watched your balance grow through ups and downs. At some point, it stops feeling like luck and starts feeling like skill. That's when people begin to test themselves. They don't abandon their core plan right away. They add to it a small side bet, a concentrated position, an opportunity someone else swears by. It feels harmless because the portfolio is large enough to absorb a hit, and that's exactly the problem. At this level, you can afford to be wrong once or twice, and that false safety net encourages bigger risks. The phrase, "I can afford to lose this," starts to justify decisions that would have felt irresponsible earlier. What's often missed is the cost of being wrong isn't just the money lost. It's the time erased. One bad decision can wipe out years of steady progress, not because it crashes everything, but because it drags growth backward while you rebuild. This is where discipline becomes more valuable than intelligence. The people who keep moving forward aren't the ones chasing the best ideas. They're the ones resisting the urge to prove they're smarter than the system. Overreach doesn't come from greed alone, it comes from familiarity. When something works for long enough, you assume you understand it fully, and that assumption is what leads people to interfere with momentum that was already doing its job. Staying the course becomes harder right when it matters most. Reaching this level brings a new kind of pressure, and it doesn't come from the market. It comes from other people. Comparison sneaks in once your progress becomes visible, sometimes only to yourself. For a brief moment, you feel accomplished. You've built something most people never do. Then perspective shifts. You meet someone who's further ahead. You read about a bigger portfolio. You see numbers that make yours feel smaller overnight. Nothing about your situation actually changed, but your satisfaction did. This is where comparison becomes dangerous. It doesn't just affect how you feel. It changes how you act. You start measuring your pace against someone else's outcome. Patience turns into urgency. Consistency starts feeling slow. At this stage, comparison doesn't push people to save more. It pushes them to rush, to close gaps that don't need closing, to take shortcuts that weren't necessary when the plan was working. The trap is subtle because it wears the mask of ambition. It feels like motivation. In reality, it's distraction. It pulls your attention away from what's been effective and toward what looks impressive. The higher your balance, the more tempting it becomes to accelerate. Not because you need to, but because you feel like you should be further along. There will always be someone ahead. Always someone who took more risk, got lucky, or started earlier. Letting that dictate your decisions is how people derail years of progress without ever making an obviously bad move. Comparison doesn't crash portfolios. It quietly reroutes them away from the path that was already working. At this point, the most powerful move doesn't look impressive at all. It looks repetitive, quiet, almost dull. And that's exactly why it works. When you reach this level, the temptation is to do more strategy, more tweaks, more clever ideas. But the people who actually break through don't add complexity, they remove it. They keep doing what already works, even when it feels too simple for the size of the numbers involved. This is where restraint becomes the advantage. Not restraint born from fear, but restraint born from understanding. You realize your job isn't to accelerate growth, it's to avoid interrupting it. The system finally has momentum, and momentum doesn't need help. It needs time. Staying boring means resisting upgrades that turn paper gains into permanent expenses. It means ignoring opportunities that promise faster results at the cost of stability. It means accepting that steady progress can feel underwhelming even when it's powerful. What makes this difficult is psychological, not financial. Watching your balance swing by large amounts creates the illusion that action is required. In reality, inaction is often the smarter choice. This is the stage where patience compounds just as much as money does. Every year you don't sabotage the process increases the likelihood that it carries you forward on its own. The people who win here aren't smarter. They're calmer. They understand that the hardest part now isn't building. It's not getting in the way. If you're approaching or sitting around $250,000 invested, understand this. The work that got you here isn't finished. It's just changed. This isn't the moment to get creative. It's the moment to stay disciplined. You don't need new strategies. You don't need faster ideas. You need patience, consistency, and the ability to ignore noise. The growth you're seeing is real, but it's fragile if you interfere with it. Most people don't fail because they start wrong. They fail because they change what's working once success becomes visible. Don't make that mistake. Protect what you've built and give it time to carry you forward.